So let's continue our conversation here about provocateurs. Some of you may remember the Standing Rock protest, the Dakota Access Pipeline protest in Standing Rock, North Dakota on native reservation land. I went there 3 times. I made some mini documentaries. I was tased on the front lines, documenting the scene, kind of sometimes wearing my activist hat, sometimes wearing my journalist hat, wrote many, many articles about it and covered the situation. One of the things that I exclusively reported on was the fact that there were provocateurs on the scene. And I will share this article. I'll show you guys this, but let me just kind of paint a little bit of background. On many of the nights at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, there was a bridge. This bridge became sort of a standoff point between the police and then what eventually became sort of private security forces, namely this company named Tigerswan that we learned about later on. And so they were on one side of the bridge, and then the protesters were on one side. And much like I think this LA situation, it started out as a very focused event. It was about prayer, it was about protecting sacred lands, and it was about bringing together native tribes. It was a beautiful movement. And as I said, what typically happens is these things get co-opted and infiltrated. And a thing as big as Standing Rock, I mean, at one point, guys, there was at least, I would say, 20,000 people. I can't even remember at this point, maybe way more, but there was definitely 20,000 people out there at the height. At the height of it, it was insane. It went from being small camps. I was there in August 2016, watching the very beginning of it, and they were like, we're going to set up camp, we're going to start resisting this pipeline. Then it grew and grew as a cause. Then one night, and the coming winter of 2016, the authorities with like fire hoses sprayed all these people, including a bunch of grandmothers, and it was all caught on camera. That really radicalized a lot of people, sent people from all over the country to go to Standing Rock. I went back to Standing Rock to go document, and there was many different battles, and a lot of these battles between the activists and including the true, I think, resistance of the native activists from the local tribes who were leading the fight and who were just outraged at what was happening. They kept trying to keep the movements peaceful, but it was absolutely clear that there was people coming from elsewhere who had other intentions. And so one of the nights that I was on this bridge, I was there like every day, there would be different events, there'd be press conferences. And that night, after a while, it started to be the place where things were getting rowdy. Like I said, it was clear there was people coming from elsewhere. I remember clearly there was this truck that came in, and the truck, I swear, I have to go back and look, but I think it was like a camo paint. And there was a group of people, 6 or 7, 8 people that obviously knew each other, had traveled together, and they were all very heavily masked up. Now, I don't fault people for wanting to wear masks, because at the end of the day, guys, if you're going to go to a protest, more than likely the police are going to be scanning the footage using Clearview AI, or now Palantir, of course, and other companies to try to locate and use facial recognition tracking to figure out who's doing what. So even if you're not doing anything illegal, they want to know every name, every person that was there. And to protect people's, privacy, a lot of people cover up completely. You don't want your tattoos to be seen. You don't want your birthmarks to be seen. You don't want your haircut to be seen, your eyes, etc. So people cover up completely. Again, I can't fault people for that. I know a lot of right-wingers immediately say, oh, it's Antifa just because people are wearing masks. It's a little bit more complex than that. But this group absolutely did come masked up, full on black bloc gear, all blacked out and everything, which is a common anarchist tactic. Again, doesn't necessarily mean they're government agents. But this was either, I would say, some young, angry anarchists who just are nihilists and wanted to come fuck some things up, or something else more nefarious. And so I started to see these people show up. I remember even they come onto the main bridge and they're like bumping, the whole vibe changed. It went from native songs and drums and prayers to then all of a sudden provocateurs bumping super, I don't know, the energy was bad. It was some rap, I can't remember what it was, but it was definitely not some conscious good vibe music. It was something heavy. And I remember them saying, if you don't like it, get the fuck off the bridge, because they were making it clear they were changing tactics now. They were ready to get a little more rowdy. And if you didn't like it, if you were just about prayer and singing songs, you probably should leave the bridge. And I stayed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep documenting. And at one point I started to film as the people, the provocateurs and the protesters, some of which I think were legitimate and just sort of got caught up in what was going on, started to throw things at the police side, started to just get more, radical, more aggressive with it. And at one point I'm filming this all, and I get surrounded by this group of people, and they said, why are you filming? What are you filming? Delete that now. And I was alone on the bridge. All my friends had left and gone back to the camp. And I realized that I was probably in a dangerous situation, that whoever these people were, if I didn't comply and delete, my footage, which is like some, total fascist tactics, something like the cops would do, I probably was going to get beat up, or they were going to throw my camera off the bridge. And I think they even, threatened to. And under the bridge was the river, so my camera, my equipment would have been ruined. I quietly deleted the footage and then walked off and act like I left. But what I did was I left the bridge and I kind of walked away a little bit and snuck back down by the water and went sort of underneath in the side of the bridge. And so the footage I want to show you guys, when I released it, let me pull this up actually. When I released this in 2016, it hadn't been seen anywhere. I filmed it in 2016, but I didn't release it till 2017, like a year later. This was an article I wrote for Activist Post. Exclusive new video emerges of No DAPL provocateurs setting vehicles on fire. And then we have the version on the Conscious Resistance website. You can see this picture on the screen. This is a picture I took of the burnt out vehicle. Exclusive: provocateurs start fires at Standing Rock, October 27, 2016. And I put the video out like a year later. I'm going to show you guys that video in just a second. But what happened was that these, as I said, I was on the bridge, and these people who are getting a little bit more rowdy start to basically make it clear they want to light something on fire. And coincidentally, wouldn't it, be just so crazy that all of a sudden the police vehicle, the police and the sort of National Guard pull up there up to the bridge, and they leave a armored truck there, and then they literally get out of the car and they drive away. And that was pretty crazy to me, because I'm like, what the heck? Why would they just leave? This group here is obviously rowdy. They're obviously trying to cause some trouble. And lo and behold, these provocateurs set the vehicle on fire. So here's a little rundown of my report. I wrote this in October 27th. In stark contrast to the water protectors' many actions of peaceful prayer and ceremony, the atmosphere at the bridge the night of October 27th was more reminiscent of an outdoor rave. The protesters on the bridge set fire to an SUV and threw rocks and other objects at a row of armored vehicles operated by law enforcement. This small faction of non-peaceful protesters and officers briefly tossed smoke bombs back and forth. Officers eventually lit two smoke bombs on the north side of the bridge before parking two armored vehicles at the exit of the bridge, preventing water protectors and protesters from evacuating that direction. And in this article, I'm distinguishing, when I say water protectors, I mean like the legitimate protesters that were there to support. There's a debate about whether violence is a useful tactic in protest. Putting that aside, I mean simply the people who are being peaceful protesters, and the provocateurs are obviously the people being provocative. All law enforcement vehicles were gone within a minute. So they pull up, they leave a vehicle there, and they all leave. And all law enforcement vehicles are gone within a matter of minutes. And immediately the protesters climbed aboard the armored vehicles and began setting them afire. And when several water protectors came to the bridge, they told those that were setting the fires and instigating the violence that this wasn't what they want for the movement. The group of provocateurs said prayer had failed, and they said now they're fighting by any means necessary. The fires they set burned throughout the night, as neither law enforcement nor fire department personnel ever arrived at the scene to extinguish the fires. And of course, in the following days, all the media reported protesters set vehicles on fire, things like that. So this is a common tactic. Again, I wrote this article June 2017. I released the video right around that time. So let's go ahead and play this video here. There's another one that went to the water. They're throwing them back. At least they're doing a good job of throwing them back. Hold a little higher. They're fucking aiming. All right, so you got to put your glasses on now, because if they watch out, throw it back. Everybody get back! I'm right here. I'm good. I'm good. I'm staying. They've been out here kind of celebrating. There's a mix of opinions. There's some people saying, why aren't there elders, why aren't there prayers out here? That's kind of, to be honest, has this feel of a party vibe out here. And there's people with like shields. I'm not sure. They probably don't take too kindly to setting fucking National Guard vehicles on fire. That's what they wanted. Two National Guard vehicles right there that have been set on the edge, and that's what they wanted. Some of these people, you can barely see them in the dark. They're advancing right there, whether they're water protectors or provocateurs, whoever they are, they're on the bridge, and they're going to
They're basically spraying oil now and gasoline now on the 2 vehicles. They're going to set them on fire. Why would they leave them there? That doesn't make any sense. This makes me feel like it was set up. Why would the police go fucking leave their vehicles right there on the fucking edge of the bridge and then back off?
It was a setup.
Yeah, they're all driving off. Or at least those ones are... Yeah, they look like they're driving off too.
Shut the road down. We wait for the drill hard. Going on the truck. If you want to do that, hey, let me see if the keys are in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh shit, that would be... Is the second one on fire yet?
Who is that? Who is that that's up there right now?
This makes you uncomfortable.
Be safe. Anybody today.
Enough with the negative energy, man. We're here in a positive way. Let's keep it positive. Confronting each other is just negative.
Hey, the keys are in there. You better take care of
What are they doing in there? Are they gonna fucking protect the fucking car?
I'll pause it real quick. Right here, what you can see is that it's kind of hard to see, but I'm off on the side. I've already left the bridge basically at this point, and I'm kind of off to the side, hiding off on the side of the water. And you see the water light from up there. That's the vehicles from the police department there. But here's, let me go up forward a little bit. This is where they leave the vehicle. So they literally park this vehicle there, and then one by one, they all drive away. And within moments, the provocateurs climb on board and start lighting everything on fire. And I'm just going to click through, and it's sort of, you see it just burning through the night after that. They never came and did anything about it. It was just, yeah, I wasn't here. You can see a little bit better. The provocateurs are crawling all the way over there. They're trying to light the underneath of it, trying to light, like, I think they're trying to light the gas tank on fire. And they eventually start putting like Molotov cocktails inside the seats of the car, this armored truck or this little SUV, and it burned out. And by the next morning, let me see if I do have footage on here from the next morning. I think that might just be it, where it just fades out. So this was me again on the side of the bridge. This is after I'd been threatened and kicked off the bridge by these provocateurs who clearly came from a different part. They weren't from Dakota. They weren't from the Dakotas. They definitely seem to have a different agenda and different goals, and they couldn't care less about, you know, the movement and the actual cause. And this is what often happens in these movements. So I know it's easy for some people to just say, well, the whole LA protests are all a psyop and it's just a big setup happening. But I don't think it's always that simple. I think that what happens is provocateurs come in, and those provocateurs they sure could be agents of the U.S. government, or they could be something different. You know, it could be that they are just people with shitty tactics. They just think that violence is the answer. There are real people like that. I've met and worked with many activists like this over the years who do believe that violence is a legitimate tactic. So it's not always the case that this is a government funded operation. I just want to make that clear, because again, I know some people, they see all these protests and they're like, it's all being funded by George Soros. And to be clear, some of these organizations have been funded by George Soros, who are protesting against Trump's practices. But at the same time, that doesn't mean everybody has. I've never been paid by George Soros, and I don't support Trump. You don't need to pay me because I don't support him. I don't support his tactics. And what happens is sometimes legitimate causes like a resistance to Trump and his practices can be co-opted by provocateurs who are either paid government agents or just shitty people, bad actors who think that violence is the answer. Now, I want to go forward and show you this other report I did. This is, when did this come out? This was 2017. So again, about a year after Standing Rock, Whistleblower confirms that security vehicles were set on fire. As I documented it on camera already. I showed that it's real, but here's another report. This one was from HPR1, June 8th, 2017. Former DAPL security speaks out, damning Tigerswan tactics. Speaking from a nondescript hotel room, a former DAPL security employee reveals secret agendas, illegal activities, and widespread drug use among private security employees hired by Energy Transfer Partners to protect the company's interests along the Dakota Access Pipeline in North Dakota. describing an agenda that included setting company vehicles on fire, stealing equipment, and intentionally riling up protesters. Courtney Doctor, 22 of Bismarck, exposed that the security firms involved actively attempted to pin illegal activities on activists. Doctor contacted Michael Fassage, who worked Ossetti Sakowin security during the controversy, and Aubrey Peckham, both affiliated with Activate Now, an independent news network, for the interview. Days before she spoke, she made an announcement. Free bird, she said on Facebook on June 5th. Prepare for a major info drop from my fellow ex-DAPL workers. I'm about to expose everything that illegally happened during my job working security. So she goes on to just detail different things like them messing with activists, trying to create problems with activists, and definitely, as it says there, setting vehicles on fire. Let's go ahead and just look at those keywords. After the treaty camp was cleared on October 27th, Tigerswan mercenaries, and Tigerswan in this case is a private security firm that we learned about that was being hired by the police to work with them, and they were infiltrating this massive camp that got set up around the resistance against the pipeline. Tigerswan mercenaries set fire to the 5-ton trucks on the bridge. So think about that. After the treaty camp was cleared, Tigerswan mercenaries set fire to this. And let me go back, check my dates here. I reported on this happening on October 27th. As you can see here, I released new footage showing that protesters and police were clashing on the bridge on October 27th, and then somebody lit vehicles on fire. And like I said, it was provocateurs. It could have just been some angry anarchists. But according to this whistleblower, on October 27th, Tigerswan mercenaries set fire to trucks on the bridge. The whistleblower said, quote, Tigerswan sent people out at night to light equipment on fire. John Porter was sent to set equipment on fire overnight. He did it solo. He had backup. He had some drone coverage, but they set their own equipment on fire. Right there, guys, right there. That was exactly what I witnessed when I was there in person as a journalist, documenting this and showing people what happened. If I hadn't filmed that, there would be no video proof of what this person is saying. It's one thing to hear them say it. It's a whole nother thing that I caught it all on film. And this is my picture. You can see the vehicle burnt out the next day. And as I said, this is everything that the media reported. That's what they want to do. They want to infiltrate. They want to disrupt. They want to delay. They want to divide. They want to make any potential movements look like movements that shouldn't be supported in the public eye, because the average Jane and Joe Q American aren't going to support burning of vehicles and looting and rioting. This is why people are working against themselves, and they don't realize it when they're trying to, get out there and be violent. Again, I know there's different people who have various positions about the use of violence. I know activists over the years who said they think violence is a legitimate tactic. I tend to disagree, but it's a philosophical discussion. But if beyond the philosophical side of things, if you're trying to win over hearts and minds, then you might want to not use violence, because it's just not going to work, guys. It should only be used, I think, in very dire times when absolutely necessary. Beyond that, you're not going to get the support you think you want. So just one other thought here on this situation before we take our next quick break. Carrie Wedler says this, Carrie with the wisdom again. Unpopular opinion. The ruling class benefits from your reactivity and rage around all the chaos, authoritarianism, the frenetic, never-ending news cycle, addictive social media scrolling, and engineered divide and conquer tactics. The more stressed and caught in fight or flight you are, the less rational and the more hysterical you become, and the easier you are to manipulate. And those in power will always promise to rescue you from your fears about the problems they create, as long as you give them more control. It's an act of defiance to prioritize your inner peace and refuse to be whipped around by politicians, the media, and the havoc that they wreak. And I couldn't have said it better myself, Carrie. True sovereignty is not letting this system and these psychopaths be in control of your mental state any more than it is your physical state. Yes, we want to stay free in our bodies and our hearts and in the physical realm, but we also want to stay free in our minds and our spirits. And to do that, we have to be the ones in control. We can't let them control and manipulate our emotional state to get sucked in. Even myself, I'm doing a show on this because I feel like it's an important topic. But the last couple of days, I've been getting sucked into debating with people who are the kind of people who are saying, yes, Palantir. And I'm just like, oh my God, why are people so stupid? But I realize that I have to center myself. I have to take care of my own mind, my own heart. I need to spend time with my family and the people I love, because one of the best victories we can do is actually just living free. and not getting sucked into the debate. There is a battle of ideas that takes place on the internet, and it's valuable. I think it's useful. That's why I even participate in it. But there's also trolls. There's also bots. There's also people who are literally just being paid to come argue with you and waste your time, especially if you're a content creator and you're starting to reach people. So when I find myself and I'm debating 5 people on Twitter and 3 people on Telegram and a couple others on Facebook and 1 more on YouTube and then somebody else in my email, I just say, have a nice day, and I move on. So here's to taking control of our inner state, finding that inner peace, and not letting they, them, those control us in that way.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.